Hi all, we're going to have a look now at Kasparov versus Anand, played in round 9 of the Linares 1993 tournament. Now this is quite topical because Anand is actually rank 1 on the FIDE list jointly with a near 2800 rating. So that's in 2008. And here we see a system which, thanks to Kramnik, has been highly popularised. This super solid Slav defence. We see in this game though that it's not so solid when Kasparov is playing white. So why is this? After knight f3, knight f6, Kasparov simply played knight c3, so he allows the temporary gambit of the pawn. Now I myself like the way Kasparov has played this, and I usually myself gambit a pawn with g3 and bishop g2, making it a sort of real gambit. However, I think the safer approach is what Kasparov played with this immediate a4. So the only positional weakness of this is this b4 square. So a bishop can often go there later. But Kasparov seemed not to mind that at all. And he created an entirely new strategy here. So even though black seemed very solid, he broke down black on these light squares. So focus on these light squares in this game and what happens to them, and this diagonal in particular. After e3, Kasparov is about to regain his pawn. So the positional concession now of the b4 square, it's being used for a knight just to go there, to put pressure on white's position. Kasparov just castled, but now after knight d7, black hasn't routinely castled, and Kasparov actually plays knight h4, which ordinarily, they say a knight on a rim is dim, but in this particular case it's quite justified, because if, say, Kasparov didn't play that and black later played h6, the bishop could go back to h7. So here, now, after bishop g6, black will never be able to play h6 without allowing the horrid knight takes g6. And Kasparov is not even in any rush to take it now, because if he did take it immediately, this h-file might be useful for the attack on white's king. Black might play queen c7 and castles queenside. For example, knight takes hg, bishop d2, let's say queen c7, h3, castles queenside, and black would have an interesting position here with attacking prospects. So Kasparov actually waited for after h3 for black to castle, and now knight takes g6 finally. And after hg, we see that tactically, these double pawns are a bit of a liability around the black king. If white later has a tactical resources with this h-file, as we'll see later, that is actually in some of the variations quite important to consider. So after queen c2, rook c8, now rook d1 was played, so seemingly simple and effective centralising move, trying to discourage c5. Anand played queen b6, and now after e4, we see now black pressurising the dark squares in white's position, particularly the d4 square. He manages to get what is seemingly a very powerful knight later to the d4. But the side effect of this dark square strategy is that the light squares are being weakened now even further. So we see now that after d5, knight e5, bishop e2, and now Anand took on d5. Kasparov just took with his knight, and after knight takes, rook takes, black plays for the dark square strategy with knight c6, so seemingly getting a very pleasant knight on d4. But as I say, the side effect of all this dark square play, is the light squares. In particular, f7 is going to become victimised soon by Kasparov. First he plays bishop c4, so he's already eyeing this f7 pawn, and after knight d4 he simply plays queen d3. Now although this knight is very good in the centre, it's not really doing that much. It hasn't actually got that much support from the rest of black's pieces. So it's a bit academic, to be honest. After rook c d8, bishop e3, it's also a potential liability now tactically. So Anand plays rook takes d5, and after bishop takes d5, rook d8. Now Kasparov intensifies the pressure on f7 by playing queen c4. So rook d7, seemingly adequate defensive move. But after rook c1, the threats are still mounting now, like bishop takes and then queen c8. So Anand actually plays queen f6, so he can answer with queen takes d4 if bishop takes d4. But now this rook cunningly shifts attention to a different kind of threat. Kasparov plays rook d1, with one idea, maybe rook d3 and later bishop d4 and rook f3, as well as the immediate threat on the knight. So the knight retreats, though, and here queen b3 is played. So again, this rook, has great versatility to either go to d3 and then to f3, or just rook c1 to probe black's queen side. So Anand tried to sort of lock up the queen side now, sort of trapping his bishop on the other side into the opponent's position with a5. So we have this cemented bishop on that weakness out of the opening, the b4 square. And now after rook d3, Kasparov has still got these threats, of coming to pressurise the f7 square. And knight f4 was a clear blunder by Anand, in my opinion. Rybka really likes white's position, almost 2 units up, after this devastating tactic which is played by Kasparov. Can you spot it? I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kasparov played the pawn sacrifice e5, because if queen takes e5, there's bishop takes f7 check. And now if rook takes f7, rook d8 check, the king would move and queen takes f7, winning the exchange, and black hasn't got anything. So here, just there's nothing for black. Because I think this is just far, the knight's, there's no checks, so that's winning for white. So this devastating tactic, e5, because it's really going to be used as a battering ram now on this f7 square. After queen f5, we see now this rook manoeuvre threat is coming into play now. Bishop takes f4, queen takes, and now e6, but now there's also this threat of rook f3. Anand played rook d8, and actually there's very good moves now for white, either g3 or e takes f7. Kasparov chose a very good one as well, just e7, but these other ones are adequate as well. For example, e takes, and here just g3, and in this position rook e3 with the idea of rook e8 is devastating. So so there were many ways to increase advantage here. Kasparov's e7 is also very powerful, because after rook f3 a simple coordination, treble coordination on the f7 pawn. After check, king h2, rook e7. Kasparov now is ripping apart the light squares and pawns around black's king, and in this position plays a devastating tactic. Can you see this? I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bishop takes g6, with the subtle idea that if king takes, there's queen d3 check. And wherever the king goes now, if it went to g5, queen d8, or if king h6, queen d6, just picking up that rook, the exchange up. And black has got nothing here, no checks or anything. So bishop takes g6, and it's all over really. After king h6, Kasparov's technique comes into play now. He plays queen d5, threatening immediate mating one with queen h5. So Anand has to protect against that. Now bishop f5 with so he's material up now. He's a pawn up, and there's still intense threats like rook g3. After g6 he plays just h4. So now evicting the queen, because if queen takes h4, rook h3, pinning the queen to the king. So the queen's evicted, and after bishop d3, Kasparov doesn't mind the exchange of queens because the attack rages on with the rook and bishop. After this rook f6, Anand desperately sacrifices another pawn. These opposite coloured bishops would normally be a drawing opportunity, but the pressure is just too much on black's position here. So the opposite coloured bishops don't really have much drawing hope here. So after rook f6, rook e4, seemingly at least forking bishop and pawn, just bishop d3, just targeting that g6, so allowing the rook h4 I mean, because if king g3 then rook takes g6 there. So Anand chooses instead to defend the g6 pawn, but after king h3 there's just too much pressure. Bishop e7 and now rook e6, so both pieces are in pre. So rook takes h4 check now, king g3, and what is black doing here? He has to counter attack on one of white's pieces, so he plays rook d4, but now rook takes g6 check, and Kasparov is still 2 pawns up now. And after king h5, bishop f5, a kind of mating net is almost being woven here. Bishop d6, king f3, so now the g pawn can come to g4, This is very, very dangerous for the black king, which is now being checked multiple times. And now it's almost as if Kasparov wants to weave a mating net with, say, king f4, king f5 and rook h6. But this is just technique now. After checks and bishop d3 again, it's very difficult to defend this. The black bishop is on pre, as well as the threat of rook h6 check. So this g-pawn is also very dangerous now. And here we see the march of the g-pawn, which causes resignation here, finally.